Two girls, two summers in 1986. A city forever changed. For more than 3 decades, Tacoma waited for answers. Then modern DNA science broke the silence. This is the story of Michella Welch and Jennifer Jenni Bastian. How 2 cold cases from 1986 were solved, and why that breakthrough changed Washington law. In 1986, Tacoma looked like any American city. Kids rode bikes to the park. Families spent summer afternoons outdoors. But that year, 2 disappearances would rattle the community. First came 12-year-old Michella Welch, who disappeared while with her sisters in Puget Park in March. 3 months later, 13-year-old Jennifer Bastian vanished while training on her bike in Point Defiance Park. Each disappearance sparked searches, hope, and heartbreak, but no swift answers. Michella Welch was 12. On March 26, she had been playing in Puget Park with her sisters. Later that day, the family realized she hadn't returned. After an exhaustive search, Michella's body was found that evening in nearby brush. The autopsy would show blunt force trauma and sexual assault, a small girl taken from her community in a brutal crime. Investigators collected evidence, including male DNA. But DNA technology in 1986 could not produce a match. The trail stalled. For a generation, the case became one of Tacoma's worst nightmares. On August 4, 1986, 13-year-old Jennifer Jenni Bastian rode her bike into Point Defiance Park to train, a routine ride that turned into tragedy. When she didn't come home, searches began. 2 weeks later, her body was found in a wooded area. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. Investigators worked the case, but like Michella's, that investigation went cold. Leads dried up, and the killer remained at large. Through the late 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s, the families refused to let the cases die. Detectives revisited files, re-interviewed witnesses, and kept the evidence secured. Yet, until technology advanced, the DNA evidence could not identify a suspect. For the families, the parents who never stopped hoping, every year without answers was another wound. The turning point came decades later. With advances in DNA analysis and the rise of investigative genetic genealogy, the technique that compares crime scene DNA to public genealogy databases and builds family trees, cold case detectives gained a new weapon. In both Tacoma cases, investigators re-examined evidence and worked with forensic labs and genealogists to find matches in unexpected places. In Michella's case, detectives traced a genetic lead to two brothers who had lived in Tacoma at the time. Investigators then used careful surveillance to obtain a discarded napkin from one brother. DNA on that napkin matched the crime scene DNA and led to the arrest of Gary Charles Hartman in June 2018. Police arrested Gary Hartman, then in his 60s and reportedly a longtime employee at a local facility, and charged him with first-degree rape and first-degree murder. Hartman eventually faced trial. In 2022, he was convicted and sentenced to more than 26 years in prison, years after anyone imagined the case could be solved. Meanwhile, the Bastian case moved on a parallel but separate path. Investigators retested DNA from Jenni's clothing and again used modern analytical tools and genealogy. That work led detectives to Robert Washburn, who had lived in the Tacoma area in 1986 and later lived in Illinois. Washburn was arrested in May 2018 after DNA on evidence matched his profile, and in early 2019 he pleaded guilty and received a sentence of roughly 26 to 27 years. How exactly do investigators go from a tiny DNA sample to a name? First, laboratory teams extract a usable DNA profile from evidence. Then, specialized genealogy firms compare that profile to DNA in public genealogy databases to find distant relatives. From those relatives, genealogists construct family trees and identify likely candidates, which police then confirm with traditional detective work, surveillance, and direct DNA from discarded items or court-ordered samples. It's a mix of cutting-edge science and old-fashioned police work. That mix has solved dozens of cold cases, but it has also stirred debate about privacy and the limits of genealogy policing. Washington lawmakers reacted to the Tacoma cases by expanding the state's DNA authority to better solve cold cases and protect the public. For the families, convictions do not remove the pain, but they can change the unanswered question into a hard, factual truth. Jennifer's mother and Michella's family publicly said the arrests and convictions brought complex emotions, sorrow, relief, and the awkward, bittersweet sense of closure. Prosecutors and detectives said the cases also showed the value of perseverance and the responsibility of investigators to keep evidence safe for future science. In 2019, the Washington legislature passed a law, commonly referred to in reporting as Jennifer and Michella's Law, expanding the state's DNA database and the ability to use modern forensic tools to solve cold cases. Officials said the bill honors the girls and equips law enforcement to find answers in other cold cases. Investigators also caution that every case is different. Not every cold case will yield a DNA match. Not every match leads to a conviction. But the Tacoma investigations prove a central truth. Evidence preserved decades ago can still bring justice when science and persistence meet. Michella and Jenni were children who never grew up. Their names became part of Tacoma's history. Painful, but not forgotten. Their cases show how technology can reach back across decades and return answers to families who waited the longest. If you or someone you know has information about an unsolved case, contact your local cold case unit. For those who work in forensics, the lesson is clear. Evidence matters. And for everyone, remember that justice sometimes arrives late, but it can still arrive. If you want more deep dives into cold cases, subscribe and ring the bell. Respect the victims and respect the facts.